California and Illinois have these exorbitant prices for gas. Anyone want to jump in on that?
It's very simple. We tax gasoline in Chicago more than any other place in the country. And all those tax monies, during this last election, I wanted somebody to stand up and say this. If you look at the Daley administration and the taxes that were placed on gasoline, and where that money is spent and gone to friends of the Daley administration. We never find it. We never see where it actually is spent. But every day, those of us who have to commute, those of us in the communities that have to get to work or get their kids to daycare, we're paying the highest taxes in the entire country on gasoline. Now, we've got to address this problem, or else we are never going to be able to get out of the rut and the economic disadvantage this city has.
I see you, Lenny. You know what frustrates me about living in Chicago? You talk about a $100 purchase being over $110 because the tax is over 10%. And of course we had the Strozier Wars and we've got Preckwinkle in the mix now. But to have a tax rate that high is bordering on ludicrous, if not violent. Lenny, talk to me.
Well, they're playing the supply and demand game, considering that we have the third highest population in the United States here in Chicago. You look at California, you got LA out there, you have San Francisco, you have Oakland, you have Sacramento, you have other cities out there. So it's the supply and demand game when it comes to these oil prices that unfortunately we are privy to. Now, the question really comes down to this. What can we do as Americans where we're not so reliant on issues in foreign lands, where unfortunately many of our young people have to perhaps die for wars that they don't quite understand, that are based on economy, not truly based on freedom. It may be based on freedom in some aspects. You look at what happened in Egypt and other countries, but for every one of those, you also have to question, is it a matter of liberty or a matter of economy when it comes to why the United States flies over to the Middle East every time you turn around?
You know what, we're going to shift gears here just slightly and talk about the spoiled American here in the United States. I think we all are to a certain degree. And let's talk about unions and Walmart. What really interests me with organized labor in this country is that there's this war now in Wisconsin and Indiana that says we want to keep organized labor, we want collective bargaining. There's the other side that says right to work. Doesn't really matter what we pay you, but right to work, which fundamentally means right to fire or right to not hire. I'm going to open up with the woman I love to argue with, Stacy Davis-Gates. I'm your friend today. I've got my boxing gloves off. Talk to me, Stacy.
Thank you. I think it's very important. First off, I would say that the standoff in Wisconsin, which is obviously no longer a standoff, has galvanized unionism and union members across the country in a very positive manner. It has also given opportunity for education to the average American, to the average student, of the history of unions in America, the foundation of the middle class in America, and quite frankly, one that hasn't been explored a lot is the foundation of the civil rights movement in America in terms of labor as well. So I think that those are very positive gains from this debacle. Another one I think that makes sense is when you say spoiled Americans and you use unions at the same time. One thing that I think has not been put across most effectively is that the average pension is $26,000 a year. And here in Illinois, if you're receiving a pension, you're not going to receive Social Security because you're not paying into that. So we have to really and truly speak about the practicality of the numbers, not about the propaganda that they have to pay their fair share and that taxpayers are sick of being taken advantage of. I'm a union member and I pay taxes. So I don't understand the argument there. And to also balance the budget from working people's pockets consistently, while also providing business huge tax holidays, breaks, abatements, and gifts. Balance is the key.
Yeah, I think you're right. Balance is the key. We see that Walmart has been given the green light to move into the South Side. Could be possibly 2, could be 4, could be up to 6 Walmarts on the South and West sides of Chicago. Walmart is also in a situation where they have to sort of abide by some union rules. What do you think, Sam Adam, when it comes to Walmart moving in and them saying, you know what, we still want right to work?
Well, I'm what you'd call, I suppose, a deep-seated liberal. I am always for the worker. That's what I am. That's just who I happen to come out for. These are issues, I think, that are very important, and important in a lot of different ways. I can understand how a person who owns a business says, I want to run my business the way I want to run it. But I can also understand, and actually my heart goes out to the workers who say, look, we have a right to negotiate with you. If I as a clerk, I'm negotiating against the Waltons, I'm going to lose that battle every day of the week.
That's right.
So to watch Walmart come in, there are some amazing things. The most important thing to me is what has happened in this country is we have an energy now. We have a young, developing energy that are saying we are not going to take this anymore. We haven't had that since, in my opinion, since the 60s, where people are really starting to get together and say, I understand that we may live in one of the greatest countries in the world, but we need to make this better and stand up for their rights. Wisconsin was wonderful for that. Yeah. That's where I went to school. Actually, I have a condo that my wife and I have up there in Madison. I love Madison, best city next to Chicago in America. But to watch those people get excited and then come out and say no longer, as Thomas Jefferson said, that people will suffer the evils as long as they're sufferable. Well, we are getting to a point where they're no longer sufferable. And it's time to stand up and say enough, whatever side you're on, but let's get it out there, let's get the debate, let's have the marketplace of ideas settle it.
Lenny, I'm coming your way. I want to read something that Abdul Ghani al-Iryani, he's a Yemen political research analyst. He said, whether it is Egypt or Yemen or Libya or Tunisia, the people are disempowered. People are marginalized, and the few at the very top monopolize the power and the wealth of the country. The level of corruption in Yemen is definitely worse in Egypt and maybe as bad as Libya. Let's bring that quote to the United States. Are people disempowered, Lenny McAllister, in this country? We've got a super liberal here, and we've got the hip-hop Republican. Talk to me, Lenny.
Well, it's either or. People said, and I'm going to throw this out there, is this AstroTurf that we're seeing from the unions up there organizing in Madison? Because that's what was said about the Tea Party. And it's going to either be AstroTurf on both sides, or both sides are truly upset over the conditions of what's going on in this country. Because what we have found out is, for the most part, this recession doesn't really discriminate.
Right.
I mean, African Americans have caught it more than anybody else when it comes to the unemployment rates, but there's a whole lot of Irish and German Americans unemployed too. There's a lot of women unemployed, men unemployed. There's a lot of people that were once making $80,000 and $90,000 and $100,000 a year that no longer have the home they were living in 5 years ago. Yeah. So what we are finding, both sides are upset. I would dare to say that it's more genuine than AstroTurf. But with that said, we're going to have to start looking at what are the solutions, because there are still some uses for unions here. We cannot allow the American worker to be taken advantage of. At the same time, unions cannot operate as if we're still in the 60s and 70s. We're going to have to look at what is the financial paradigm that we're in right now. How do we come across with something that's fair, that will allow us to move forward and get out of this mess without necessarily balancing it on the back of the working class American or Illinoisan, but at the same time making sense so that we have an Illinois that makes sense in 15 years.
Yeah, quickly, Stacy, and then I'm going to switch gears.
What I find interesting about these arguments, though, is that we find right now is that there's a greater concentration of wealth in the 1% of America than it is anywhere else. So when we speak about, you know, distribution of resources and how people live in this country, everyone is upset. And there's reason for it. But we have to get past the propaganda, because propaganda has us stuck in the fact that there is the greatest dichotomy right now between the haves and have-nots since the records have been kept of this in America right now. Yeah. And we're living that. So what does that really mean to everyone sitting around the table? We can't let the Koch brothers continue to propagandize the working class white man as much as we cannot let anyone else do it on the other side. We have to understand we're fighting the same battle. We have the same issues, and we have to speak about those issues, because what we'll find is that the commonalities are way more than the differences are.